It wasn't just a goal, it was a full-body exorcism. A punch through the silence. A defiant scream from a team teetering on the edge of frustration. When Federico Valverde caught that ball on the volley in the 93rd minute, the Santiago Bernabéu didn't erupt. It combusted. And for those who endured the preceding 92 minutes of tension, grit, and incremental despair, it felt like something cosmic had finally cracked open. You could feel the weight of it, couldn't you? This wasn't just another league game. This was Real Madrid chasing shadows, chasing Barcelona, chasing themselves. And there they were, locked in a maddening stalemate with an athletic club side that showed up wearing an entire philosophy of resistance like armor. This wasn't football, it was trench warfare, and the ball was a stubborn mule no one could quite coax into submission. So when Diaz, full of jitters and intention, buzzed along the edge of the box in the dying embers of stoppage time, it didn't scream destiny. It whispered desperation. A Bilbao defender poked the ball away. It should have been the end of that sequence. But no, it was only the beginning of the moment that would define this game. The ball loops up, slowly, suspended in the air like a dare. Valverde doesn't hesitate. Not for a second. He doesn't pause to consider the consequences of a mistimed volley or the optics of going full throttle in the 93rd minute. No, he steps into it like it's the only thing that's ever mattered, like his entire season has been building to this specific collision between boot and ball. And when it hits the net, top left corner, physics-defying aesthetically illegal, it's not just a goal. It's a clarion call. It's Federico Valverde screaming through the laces of his boot. We are still here. We are not going quietly. Simon, who had been magnificent all night, didn't even move. You couldn't really blame him. That shot wasn't meant for saving. It was meant for remembering. The celebration wasn't wild either. No shirt-tugging or knee slides. Just that moment where time froze. Players looked at each other as if to confirm what had just happened. And the Bernabéu unleashed something primal. Because let's be honest, this match didn't deserve a goal like that. It wasn't that kind of game. And that's exactly why it worked. The contrast. The chaos. The purity. One swing of a boot to remind everyone why we sit through the nil-kneels, the tactical standoffs, the video assistant referee-induced anxiety spirals. One swing to make it all worth it. Valverde had been a constant presence throughout. Dogged, energetic, emotionally caffeinated. But until that goal, he hadn't put a stamp on this match. And then, in that flash, he carved his name into it with a dagger. Madrid didn't win because they were better for 90 minutes. They won because they refused to let this one die quietly. They won because somewhere in the DNA of this team is a little strand that simply does not tolerate surrender. And tonight, that little strand lived in Valverde's right boot. So yes, Real Madrid underperformed their expected goals. Yes, they toiled through a game that felt more like navigating a hedge maze than a football pitch. But when the time came to conjure something outrageous, something devastating, something unforgettable, they had the one player who was mad enough to try it. And that madness made all the difference. This was not a statement win. It wasn't poetry in motion. It was a blood and thunder, edge of the knife, one chance is all you get kind of win, and it keeps them within arm's reach of Barcelona. 4 points. 4 brutal, hopeful, maddening points. Ask yourself, if they go on to lift the title, will you remember the 90 passive-aggressive minutes, or will you remember Valverde's goal, the kind that burns a permanent mark into your footballing soul? Let's rewind. Let's pull the curtain back on what came before the catharsis, because this wasn't just 92 minutes of build-up. It was an escalating opera of futility, strategy, fatigue, and flickers of promise. If Valverde's goal was the thunder, the first and second halves were the ominous clouds. The first half? Honestly, it was the kind of football that makes your coffee taste weaker. Real Madrid, with all their celestial talent and glorious history, playing with the urgency of a Sunday stroll in the park, but a park where all the entrances are locked and every bench is taken. Athletic Club weren't interested in glamour. They were here to gnaw at ankles, compress space, and make sure that every real pass had the emotional weight of an existential crisis. That low block? It wasn't just tactical. It was a lifestyle. 75% possession for Madrid in that opening half, and yet it felt like they were trying to break into a bank with a spoon. There was a moment, around minute 28, when Vinicius Jr. got fed up and decided to ignore everyone, charge through the middle, and shoot from a postcode away. It sailed over the bar, sure, but it was the first real sign of something animal. It was the first time someone broke the script, even if just to scribble nonsense in the margins. Meanwhile, Bilbao? Not a shot on target, but somehow still the more emotionally stable team. They weren't here to create art, they were here to make sure Madrid didn't either. Guruzzeta had a couple of what-if moments, but they evaporated faster than Bellingham's patience. As the whistle blew for halftime, you could almost hear the collective shrug from the stadium, the kind that says, "So, that happened." Goalless. Drab. So tight that even oxygen was struggling to get between the lines. But then, the second half, something changed. Not drastically, not romantically, but subtly, like someone turned the volume up a notch without telling anyone. Madrid started ticking. Just a little. Rodrigo started creeping into spaces. Camavinga remembered he has feet made of silk and dynamite, and Bellingham, sweet, exasperated Jude, started running like someone owed him an apology. 51st minute. Vinicius flicks a backheel. Camavinga, who had slipped through the lines like a rumor, unleashes a shot that forces Simon to tip over. First real gasp of the night. Not long after, a Vinicius trivela, a word that sounds like poetry because it is, finds Bellingham's head. Again, Simon is there, gloved fingers defying the inevitable. And so it went. Madrid pushed. Not with elegance, but with that specific brand of Real Madrid stubbornness. If they were going to lose, they were going to lose, trying. Then came the chaos phase. Endrick nearly scores. His toenail is apparently offside. Thank you, video assistant referee and your never-satisfied geometry. Bellingham gets kicked. Not enough for a penalty, apparently. Vinicius scores. Wait. No. That toe again. Back to square one. The game began to crackle with that familiar tension, like a room where everyone's waiting for someone to admit a mistake. And then, it was as if the match realized it had no ending, no climax, no payoff, until Diaz scurried down that right flank, lost the ball, and Valverde decided to change the script with a 93rd minute piece of absurdity. So yes, two halves. The first was a closed door. The second was a door slowly creaking open, and the goal? That was someone kicking the door off its hinges. It's easy to talk about this game in cliches, gritty, tight, a battle of attrition. But what this really was? It was a mental test. Madrid had to fight not just the opponent, but their own creeping doubt, their own fading rhythm, their own dwindling time, and they passed. Barely. Let's talk about the two sides. Not just their shapes on the field or their positions in the table, but who they were, what they brought, and why it mattered. Real Madrid were not smooth. They weren't slick. They didn't glide into this match like a Ferrari with a fresh coat of arrogance. No, this was a Real Madrid with baggage. With bruises, with the lingering smoke of a 5-1 aggregate collapse still wafting from their Champions League exit. And it showed. But this is the part about Real Madrid people never say out loud. They don't just play matches. They haunt them. They linger. They're like a presence in the room you can't quite shake, and even when they're dragging their boots through a soupy midfield battle, you know they're not gone. You know they're still capable of flipping the whole narrative upside down with a moment. And then there was Athletic Club. Athletic were here with a very different energy. Fourth in the table, Europa League dreams fresh in their lungs after a disciplined win over Rangers. You could see it in their shape, in their purpose. This was a team built to absorb, to frustrate. They were the no, you can't do that to Madrid's every attempt. And there was a certain nobility in that. A commitment to the plan so absolute, it became their identity for the full 90-plus minutes. Athletic weren't here for the ball. They were here to make the ball irrelevant. They played like a team that knows its limits, and instead of fighting them, they weaponized them. You want to pass around the back? We'll wait. You want to find a gap? Good luck. You want to fly down the wings? We've got fullbacks who live for this exact kind of claustrophobia. This was two philosophies, Real Madrid, with their galaxy-brained rotations and transcendent individuals trying to improvise the future. Athletic Club, with their well-worn blueprint, drawing clear lines between what's allowed and what isn't. You could almost see the personalities of the two coaches leaking into the pitch. Ancelotti, cool, cerebral, adjusting pieces like he's stirring coffee in a thunderstorm. And Ernesto Valverde, stone-faced, arms folded, daring the opponent to make the first real mistake. Madrid were chaos politely dressed in white. Athletic were order dressed in red and white armor. And for most of the match, it felt like the armor was winning. But that's the thing. In football, structure holds until emotion breaks it. And Valverde, the player, not the coach, found the one crack in the whole Bilbao wall and turned it into rubble. One goal, and suddenly all of Athletic's composure looked like it had been built on wet cardboard. It wasn't that Athletic failed. They didn't. They executed their game plan with maddening discipline. They held Madrid under 2 expected goals. They forced disallowed goals, survived waves of pressure, and even flirted with their own late heroics. They did everything right, except the one thing that matters: score. And that's the story, isn't it? Madrid brought noise. Athletic brought silence. And for 92 minutes, silence was winning. But in football, as in life, sometimes the loudest moments come when everything seems settled. Athletic will walk away from this game with a bruised sense of justice. But they shouldn't walk away ashamed. They made Madrid sweat, made them dig, made them win the hard way. And as much as Real Madrid were the victors on the scoreboard, you'd be a fool to look at this match and not admire what Athletic did. These were not just 2 teams. These were 2 worldviews. Madrid said, "We will find a way." Athletic said, "Not through us." And for 92 minutes, both were right. But only one left with the points. All right, we've relived the goal, unspooled the rhythm of the match, and chewed over the tactical clash like it was stale gum. Now, let's do the only thing football fans love more than the game itself: overanalyze the individuals like they're mythic beings or guilty suspects. Depends on how the night went. Let's start where all roads eventually lead this season: Jude Bellingham. He's the kind of player who looks like he was dropped into midfield by the football gods with a note attached: use only when essential. But here's the thing: Real Madrid always use him. Constantly. Because when you're Jude Bellingham, essential becomes your default setting. But this match, this was Bellingham in frustration mode. He ran, he created, he asked for the ball like it was a lifeline. But every time he got close, something was off. A block. A bounce. A toe offside. A referee too sleepy to notice Núñez's clumsy penalty foul. He had chances, sure. The late poke over the bar, the ghost of a penalty. And yet, you never felt like he was fully locked in. He was more storm cloud than lightning bolt tonight. Federico Valverde, though. Oh boy, I should just insert a chef's kiss sound effect and be done with it. But I won't, because the man deserves words. This was a performance straight from the edge of belief. Valverde didn't just score the goal. He earned it with every tackle, every sprint, every bizarre cross to nobody that somehow looked important in retrospect. Playing it right back, which sounds like a punishment but clearly isn't when you're Federico Valverde, he roamed like a man with a grudge against physics. Then came that goal. 90th-something minute, game dying in the shadows, and he launches a shot that violates several natural laws. Goal of the month? Probably. Goal of his life? Maybe. Goal of Real Madrid season? We'll see. But it was perfect, untouched, immortal. Vinicius Jr. was a chaos merchant. Sometimes glorious, sometimes frustrating, always visible. If this match were a dance, he was the guy spinning wildly while everyone else tried to stay in rhythm. He had that gorgeous trivel across to Bellingham. He had the disallowed goal. Cut inside, bang, finished like he'd done it in a dream. But that toe, that cursed Endrick toe, it robbed him of the spotlight, left him shaking his head like a magician accused of cheating. Rodrigo? He was there. He buzzed. He floated. He did his classic almost something brilliant act, which is beginning to feel like his brand at this point. There were moments he got free down the flank, looked up, and found only ghosts in the box. Camavinga? Silky chaos. The kid glides through pressure like he's bored by it. His shot in the 51st minute nearly cracked Simon's ribcage, and his link-up play gave Madrid their only glimpses of verticality in a match that mostly moved sideways. And speaking of Unai Simon, let's take a minute. You don't hold off Real Madrid for 92 minutes by accident. He was steady, loud, and occasionally spectacular. That save from Bellingham's header? That was the kind of stop that makes you yell, "Goal!" before realizing it wasn't. He didn't deserve to lose this match. He played like a man haunted by greatness and determined to resist it. Then there's the defense. Paredes, Núñez, Gorosabel, They played like angry traffic cones, constantly in the way, refusing to be tricked, dragged, or panicked. Nunez in particular had a night. Got into it with Bellingham, got screamed at by Vinicius, nearly gave away a penalty, and still managed to put in about 14 clearances, 200 blocks, and a couple of shoves just to remind everyone he exists. Modric? Quiet. Elegant. Tired. That's not a criticism, it's just reality. The man is closer to retirement than most fine wines, and yet there he was, picking passes, drawing fouls, orchestrating in the half spaces. He didn't light it up, but he steadied the ship. Then there was Endrick. He had his moments, which is to say he had one, and the video assistant referee crushed it with the passion of a tax auditor. He got involved, tried a bicycle kick that connected more with Nunez's lungs than the ball, and left with his dreams slightly deflated. Brahim Diaz came on late, brought energy, movement, and a vague sense that something was about to happen. And in the end, something did. Just not from him. Let's not forget Courtois. He was barely involved. He could have been reading a book for most of this match. But when Bilbao finally got through, he made that save. The kind that doesn't make highlight reels, but makes managers breathe again. So many parts, so many stories. None larger than Valverde, though. He didn't just score the goal, he stole the match, rewrote the ending, and made everyone forget the previous 92 minutes of horizontal passing and passive-aggressive pressing. That's football. One name rises above the rest. But they all mattered. Every blocked shot, every groan. Every pass that made you question whether anyone actually wanted to score. They mattered. Because in the end, the story isn't just about who won, it's about how it felt to watch it happen. This has been Across the Pitch. Over and out.